All right, peace, family. Welcome back. This is the Helping Our People Elevate study class. This is a presentation by me and Brother El Kanan. We would be doing the Why is color used in the United States, part 2, Why Not Nationality? And so we're going to go into a recap of where we left off at and then go into the part 2 of the presentation. And so without holding y'all too long.
On behalf of Akuno Senko for Bay, you know what I'm saying? Jay, where you at? We're trying to help our people elevate. Hope. H-O-P-E. We're giving them hope. We doing what we gotta do, you know? Every day, one step at a time, man. We gonna make it happen. Helping our people elevate. Yeah. Sometimes I practice focus, thought, and meditate. I'm trying to come with other ways to help our people elevate and seeking knowledge, make me levitate. The lifted mental state is what results from how we orchestrate. This for the family's sake. Let's self-reflect and self-evaluate. And every day, make sure the steps you take, you calculate. Receive a master's fate. I know I can't exist without the hate, but that's okay. I balance that with higher self today. Success is on this way, and after that, my flesh can pass away.
Can you push me back real quick to the fathers of the race paradigm real quick? So as Brother Kono said, we are going to do a quick recap and then we're going to pick up where we left off. Just for those individuals in TV land and those who are joining us, if you kind of forgot, needed to kind of get redirected to where we were, because it's been a few weeks. And then also for those of you who are just joining us for the first time, or at least for this time, to get exactly where, just the gist of where we were coming from. So as we left off, and just kind of recapping a little bit, the fathers of the modern race paradigm, we take a look at Francois Bernier, the craniologist, Carlos Linnaeus, the naturalist that created the system naturae, of course, Francois Bernier, the new division of the earth, and that was in 1684, 1758, Carlos Linnaeus, 1758, and Johann Blumenbach, who's the anthropologist, and it's associated the term white with Caucasian. 1793, 1795. So let's go to the next slide.
We're going to the chroma spectrum.
Yep. Chroma. Okay. All right. So the statement we take a look at with the three of the fathers of the race paradigm talks about color, using color to represent people. And there's a reason why, okay? But when we talk about color, as we can see here with the chromatic schema, it's just talking about color, right? So color does not represent a people. You can't say, well, there's purple people, there's the gray people, there's the green. There's association, however, with the black, brown, red, and white. However, that doesn't represent color. That could be something that's said to look at skin tone to a certain degree, but again, does not represent color. And then we have another way of looking at chromatic schema is chroma schematics. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Again, this is a recap, so I'm not going to be going into depth, but just to go through with the pictures and then kind of getting an understanding of the information. So again, with the race paradigm, again, it's looking at the color to represent people. Now we see the word here, whitewashing. So whitewashing is representing each of the nationalities to be represented with the European phenotype. And we say the Albion phenotype, right? Because again, we don't want to represent a people, right, by color. So here, when we look at Asia or Asian, all right, so the country of Asia has Asians, right? So that's how we would represent this nationality. An Asian person is from Asia, all right? But in the race paradigm, it was looking at is the people are being, associated with the color. So Asian, would be yellow, and that is according to the actual from the fathers of the race paradigm, specifically Francois Bernier. And this is the misconception that the whole world has adopted. We look at European, we have white, and that we look at that, and that's the name that a lot of people, most people are looking at, especially in North America. We're saying, okay, this is a yellow man, this is the white man. We look at Africa, which is the erroneous name there, and it's Al-Kebalan. And here we're representing black people here that are black. But that's not the El Cabalans, and or we can say Moors. And we look at red, United States. Here again, we're looking at Moors again, but we have which the name would be Red Man, and looking at his representation, and realistically, again, like I said, there's Moors here. So there's a little bit of false deception in this as well, as far as who were here. But we're not going to get into that argument right now. But the fact of the matter is, this Native American is here and is represented as the red man, which is not representing a people or nationality. And then again, we have brown, the brown man. Again, here we're talking about Latin America, and the nationality here. There's, when we look at Latin America, we have different nationalities within here, but South American. And then we look at brown, and the brown man. Now here's the Indian or East Indian, and he's considered the brown man. Again, this is all because of the race paradigm representing people as a color. And these are nationalities, so you can't represent a person by their color or by a color, all right? And then the whitewashing, as you see in each one of these pictures, when you look at Asia, Europe, Al-Kabalan, United States, Latin America, and India, you look at in each one of them to the right there, well, I won't say to the right, but in each one of these pictures, except for Europe, there's a whitewashing, because the person who is being represented in that particular continent or country is the phenotype of the European. And the purpose of all of this, the using the names and the color, is so that you can rob the people from their association to their nationality, thereby robbing them of their resources and their culture and things of that nature. And none has been done worse, or extreme as those from El Cabalan, who were here in the United States. So let's move on.
Okay, I also want to add on, while we're talking about color, that the etymology of color means to hide or conceal. And in its legal meaning, it means to distinguish from that which is real. So we must remember that its etymologic is to hide or conceal, and legally it means to deception of that which is real. It's artificial. So like you're saying, it can't be a people.
Indeed, indeed. All right, and then just here again, and this is going further into depth with this a little bit more, is when we take a look at these individuals, we can't say the red nation, the yellow nation, brown nation. We can't go through all of that because they don't exist. So these are nationalities. And we look at the nationalities and the nations that they belong to. The Moor, the Moroccan does not belong to, Black nation. There's no such thing as Black nation. Chinese nationality, there's no such thing as a yellow nation. So here we look at the nationalities as they line up with their particular nations. All right. Again, not going through a whole lesson on it because we went through this the first time and we want to kind of move along and pick up where we left off at. And all throughout the presentation, we're going to be talking about nationality and the race paradigm. So we're gonna pick up, but I just want you guys to be able to see that. Skin tones, again, now this is this no arbitrary order for this. This is specific. The skin tone also based on complexion. This is the ranking order when you start looking at privileges. Okay, remember we talked about the robbing of the resources and things of that nature, and the purpose of calling these nationalities by different colors or whatever the case it is, and also the whitewashing, right? So those nationalities that look closer to the European have the European itself is the one that's closest to.
Hey, could you mute your mic?
Please mute your mic. Mute your mic. All right.
My bad.
So yeah, so the ranking order as far as privileges, and this is all around the world: white, yellow, brown. Okay, yeah, so I'm using that, but obviously that's not true, right? So you have the European, you have the Asian, you have the Latin American, and then you have the Native American and Alkebulan. So that's the ranking order. If you're going somewhere, you'll see the servants will be more so Latin American, Native American, and Alkebulan. So, and then the ones that are in privilege who are sitting down would be the European.
Thank you.
All right, so this is just part of social engineering around the world. If you see this in movies back in the 50s and the 40s and the 60s, if you look at literature, things of that nature, publications or whatever the case it is, you're gonna see the folks that are receiving the service are the Europeans and the Asians, and those who are poor, who are being in servitude, you're going to see more so the Latin American, the Native American, and the Alkebulan. All right. So, and even when you get into those places, if you do go to Asia, those who are the dark Asians, then they're going to be the ones that serve it. So wherever you are, if you're closest to those who are Alkebulan or Native American, more so Alkebulan, they're going to be the ones that's going to be self-serving. So the darker ones are going to be the ones that are serving, and the ones who are lighter are going to be the ones receiving privilege. Okay, let's move on.
All right, so as we said, we're going to go into our presentation. Why is color used to represent people? Why not nationality? And why is nationality important? Well, the answer is the purpose of using color is to separate the people from their nationality, heritage, birthrights, land resources, inheritance, culture, behavior, genealogy, ancestry, consanguinity, and pedigree. It connects a person, well, nationality connects a person or people to a culture, to their birthrights, way of life, a way of thinking, and to a history. A nationality ties a citizen to a nation of that or in that country. And so that's what he was just breaking down with the different flags and the different nations and those different continents and those different locations. As we're talking about the social engineering and skin tone. And I believe we went over this one in the last one.
Yeah, we did. We
Yeah,
did in our last presentation. We did.
How do we get back? Okay, right here. Here's where we at, right here.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, social engineering, we're talking about skin tone and complexion. So let's analyze the definitions of skin tone and complexion. The term skin tone refers to the color of someone's skin. Skin color is a visible trait that has been used to classify people into race in the past. And so by definition, it's telling you that this is the Francis Binaire. They telling you right here, but if you don't know where it's coming from, then you won't know how to connect it. And then same with complexion, the natural color, texture, or pigmentation, as Brother Abdullah always said, how did we get to saying people's pigmentation is a color? Black, white, red, yellow, brown people, where did this come from? So this is Francis Binaire, Carl Linnaeus, Johann Friedrich Blumenbach.
How we as Moors have been violated. How have we as Moors been violated? So our claim is that we have been violated, or we as Moors. It's important because if we're not making the claim that we're Moors, then it loses all its significance, right? So our claim as Moors is that we have been violated, injured, and dehumanized by the effects of the race paradigm. We have been suffering from an ethnic cleansing, stolen inheritance, hidden birthright, genocide. We, the Moors, have been violated, marginalized, injured, dehumanized, raped, killed, robbed, exploited, mocked, and brutalized, just to name a few.
Right.
We must claim our nationality. We must reconnect ourselves back to our culture, our ancient ancestors, our people, our rights, and our privileges. We've been denied our human rights as Moors. So let's examine human rights. Human rights prohibits arbitrary deprivation of life, torture, cruel or degrading treatment or punishment, slavery and forced labor, arbitrary arrest or detention, arbitrary interference with privacy, war propaganda, discrimination, and advocacy of racial or religious. Yeah, I can't. Yeah, my computer was. Yeah, okay.
So you want to go? You want to go ahead? Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead if you want to. Okay, yep. So let me do this. So I just want to make sure that we have an understanding of some of these terms that we mentioned. For an example, arbitrary deprivation. Okay, so arbitrary deprivation, we want to get a understanding of what that actually means. So when we talk about that, arbitrary deprivation refers to the deprivation of life, right? You're being deprived of life, liberty, or freedom, or nationality in a way that is impermissible under international law or domestic law provisions. All right. So the term arbitrary can be interpreted in reference to considerations such as appropriateness, justice, predictability, reasonableness, necessity, and proportionality. So these are things that we've been robbed from as Moors, as a people. All right. Now we take a look at arbitrary arrest.
I got it pulled up if you want me to read it.
Okay. Yep.
It says an arbitrary arrest is when someone is detained or arrested without legal basis, due process, or evidence of a crime. It can also occur when the arrest or detention is not reasonable or necessary in the circumstances. And so we face that on a daily basis. There's thousands of melanated people going in the courtrooms daily dealing with this arbitrary deprivation, arbitrary arrest, and arbitrary interference. Dealing with this war propaganda.
Could I just say something?
Go
I
ahead,
was
brother.
about to ask. I wish you would. I was gonna
We
say
sure was thinking of
King.
you. We sure was thinking
I
of
said, well,
you.
King, what you got to say?
Yeah,
But
come
look,
on
we
with
was
it.
trying. Listen, we was trying to push you off to say, like, look, we gonna wait because if King gets started, we gonna be here. We gonna have about 5 more. All right, yeah, but the other thing is, this is important. We don't want to gloss over it. So please, we just talked about arbitrary deprivation, and then we just talked about arbitrary arrest. And I don't know if we got to interference yet, but I would like you to expound because this is very important. So let's hear it. I'm ready for you, brother.
Well, me and Abdullah we're going to do something about the what's her name, Camilla Harris.
Yeah, Camilla Harris.
Yep.
She made a statement, right? With a stroke of my pen. What did she say, Abdullah? Where you at, Abdullah?
Yeah, with the stroke of my pen, she said she was being interviewed 15 years ago when she was prosecutor, San Francisco. She was being interviewed, and she was saying that I could charge, talking about the power she has, at that time. It's 15 years ago, as a prosecutor. She said, the power that she wields, and she said I can charge with the stroke of my pen. I can charge someone with the lowest form of crime, a misdemeanor. They would have to, take off from work, take off from work, go down, take off work, go down and stand in long lines. They would have to probably spend time in jail. They would have to be embarrassed by their community. There was two other points: be embarrassed by the community.
They have to
Take time.
get a lawyer.
Get a lawyer. And
No,
it was a fifth one that I can't remember. Then she said, and 2 weeks later, I can dismiss the case.
Indeed.
That was 15 years ago when she was prosecuted for San Francisco.
So I just wanted to say this. They consider us low-hanging fruit.
Mm-hmm.
What do I mean? They say these are the weak people. They have no nationality, no national protection. They have no resources, no economic power, no political power, no political voice. No nation can come and aid them. These people are at the mercy of us at all times. We can kill, maim, rape, pillage, all the horrible acts when you don't have the protection of government. This is very important to educate ourselves to do what? Save ourselves and our children.
Mm-hmm.
Through these courses and through these classes, thanks to you brothers, Akono, and my brother Akil, we now have the power through education to change the way our outlook move forward from this platform. We don't have to wait any further. We're going to continue this meeting, coming together, studying together, educating each other together, because most of us don't know due process. Most of us don't know application of law. Most of us don't know source of law. Most of us don't know principles. You can't not. There's a formula to this. If you don't know these legal principles, you would never be able to will yourself out of any legal situation. Because you don't know the foundation. You don't have the basics. You would never get yourself because you don't know what they're doing. You don't even know, most of us didn't know what kind of government they're running. The United States is a mixture of a two-system process. How many people knew that? They say this is a common law. How? When they're using codified statutory law. Most of us don't even know there's no civil jurisdiction, criminal jurisdiction. They don't know that. This is why this platform is needed. Now, through thanks of Abdullah, and shim. Now I have the understanding based on the international fundamental rights that I have that can't be stripped. So I just wanted to tell y'all this is very important what you brothers are sharing. When we talking about arbitrary, when someone is being fickle-minded, double-minded in their process, they pick and choose who they want to pick on. They pick on us because we don't have a nationality. We don't have no political voice. And they're going to keep doing it until we change that.
Mm-hmm.
They did a what? War on drugs to do what? Send crack into our neighborhoods. They did a war on education. So now children who don't go to school get truancies. Mamas and daddies go to jail, get on probation, and go to court. They did a war on poverty to do what? Who did they help? Sure enough, wasn't us. They did all of these wars to decimate our community. We are the burden bearer. There was never no slavery. They never released slavery. We are still in slavery. This is still, we're not prisoners of war. This is slavery. This is subjugation. This is subjugation. This is slavery. Prisoners of war got rights.
Mhm.
They still have a nationality. If you're a prisoner of war, you still have a nationality. That means you had a government. If you're a prisoner of war, you're not a prisoner of war. You are a slave. You in captivity. You in subjugation. You've been denationalized. You're going through genocide. You're going through cruel and unusual punishment. Why? Because anytime you strip a people of their national identity, they can never find their way. It's hard for them to find their way. You strip them of their heritage and who they come from, and they'll always be searching for their own true identity. I yield.
I appreciate that.
Islam, and that was great. I just wanna I want to get a voice clip. Hopefully my phone can do this. Just to hear at the time, and still at the time, Senator Kamala Harris.
I think I was, I don't know, 22 when I started that work. I learned that with the swipe of my pen, I could charge someone with the lowest level offense. And because of the swipe of my pen, that person could be arrested. They could sit in jail for at least 48 hours. They could lose time from work, and their family maybe lose their job. They'd have to come out of their own pocket to help hire a lawyer. They'd lose standing in their community. All because of the swipe of my pen. Weeks later, I could dismiss the charges, but their life would forever be changed. So I learned at a very young age the power.
Yeah, the power, right? So
Just want to say
Amen.
something quick, so we don't lose that. Could she do that to a Chinese diplomat? Could she do that to a Chinese citizen? Could she do that to a Russian citizen? Could she do that to a British citizen? Who she referencing?
us. Yeah.
Yeah, she was 22, and so she was a senator at the time of the interview, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right.
Yep. So and we're going to talk about propaganda in the upcoming slides. We're going to talk about propaganda. We're going to show, and instead of just defining it, we're going to show what it is. Go ahead, Colonel.
Okay, so I went to a website where it had 330 names of the people that look like us that have been unalived by police in the last 10 years. I didn't put all 330 names on here, but these were just a few of the names. And one of the names on here is Breonna Taylor. And here recently, the judge acquitted both of the officers for her unaliving. And so I just wanted to put that on here and say that. But like I said, we're gonna go into a couple slides that may be a little sensitive for a few people, but this is what takes place when you have no nationality. So this brother Abner Luema, a 31-year-old who was born in Haiti, the son of a tailor and a homemaker. He worked as a security guard, and on the night of August 9th, 1997, following an altercation in a Haitian nightclub in Brooklyn, where he was out with friends, he was arrested, then brutally beaten and raped with a broken broomstick by New York police. His injuries included a punctured bladder, a severe colon, as well as broken teeth, were so severe that it required 3 major surgeries. His sphincter was torn apart, was also torn. So this is a human rights violation. This man was tortured, brutalized, and like I say, unalived. Our next one is the chairman, Fred Hampton. I'm sure a lot of y'all familiar with this brother's story, so y'all know what happened to this man. So this is another example of a human rights violation by the people that's supposed to protect us. But we also have George Stinney. This was the first 14-year-old who was executed by an electric chair for a crime that he did not commit. He was falsely accused, electrocuted, and it took them 17 years to overturn the decision. All right, Brother William, can you mute your mic, please? Then we have Mike Brown, an 18-year-old high school graduate. We all familiar with his story, but he was another one who was profiled and murdered in cold blood for a crime that he did not commit. So this was another human rights violation.
What you gonna do? Nothing. You're gonna move on and keep pressing black.
Brother, can you go ahead and mute your mic?
All right. All right, so again, our statement and claim as Moors is that us as Moors, how we've been injured. And so I'm sure everybody in here recently saw the Sonia Massey situation. But I don't know if anybody was familiar that her 4-year-old cousin was unalived by police a few weeks prior to her unaliving, and in both situations, neither officers will be charged or prosecuted for these crimes. And I'm gonna play a clip right after the Sonia Massey unaliving, where Donald Trump said that he wanted to give federal immunity to all law enforcement. Let me get to it. Let me see if it'll play. It's not giving me no sound.
Immunity to police officers so they can do their job. That we're going to give immunity to police so they can do their job. I'm giving federal immunity to police officers so they can do their job. That we're going to give immunity.
So y'all, just that clip right there. Y'all just heard the recording from Kamala. So with the swipe of a pen, they can destroy our lives. And then Trump saying, well, he's going to give federal immunity to all officers so they can do their job. And so this is what's coming for so-called Black people.
And we've been targeted. We've been the target of interest. We've been the target of interest as Moors, and it's been an ongoing war, realistically, physically, psychologically, socially, I mean, across the board. And because we don't put up a fight, we don't challenge, and because we don't know our rights, we don't know who we are, it just keeps on happening. It's a continuation. So once we start to continue to educate and educate and educate, you know, then that's how we can begin turning the tables around. So international human rights law prohibits many practices that violate.
Alkanah, but before you go on, I want to qualify. I
Okay.
want to support,
Right.
because when people, you said we don't put up a fight, and I agree with you. Class, those our people who are more so classified as Negro, colored, Black, and African American, going out in the streets and protesting because of they're protesting in that status. That's not putting up a fight. Any act done by conscious Moors in the fiction of Black, Negro, colored, nothing they do is putting up a fight. So I want to qualify. He's correct, because people will disagree with Elkanah and say, "What do you mean, Elkanah? We do put up a fight." No, we don't. You can't put up a fight in the name of Black. That's not fighting. You can't put up a fight in the name of Black. No matter what you do. That's a fiction. Black power. Black power. Go out in the street and protest. Black power. That's not putting up a fight. Million Man March. That's not a fight. Million Woman. That's not a fight.
Indeed.
You got to fight in the name of Moors. That's the only put up the fight. The only way we can put up a fight is in the name of Moors, period. If we're not putting up a fight in the name of Moors, we're not putting up a fight. That's what he means, we're not putting up a fight. I yield.
So by Islam, thank you. And by us not saying, claiming our nationality, this is going back to the fathers of the race paradigm. We're saying Black, which is a fiction, you know what I'm saying? We're saying Black. We're not representing our nationality, which we talked about earlier. We're just saying Black. And if you're not gonna say you're more, then all of this, it goes away. Because in order for you to say that you are fighting and you're resisting the subjugation, then you can't say, well, as a citizen of the United States, or as an American, or as a Black person, or as a Negro, or a name other than your nationality, then it's a moot point. You're still accepting the subjugation by using the fiction, right? So if you're not gonna say your claim as your nationality, in our case as a Moor or as Moors, then it's a moot point. You're still those who have subjugated us are still like, we still winning, because you guys still are accepting who we're saying you are, and you're not identifying yourself as your nationality. So Kono?
I also want to add, like I said, I want to add two things. The manipulation of reality is the manipulation of words. And if you don't know, those who control the words control those who must use it. And then I also want to go back to the definition of color according to law. An appearance, semblance, or similitude as distinguished from that which is real. And so if the manipulation of reality is the manipulation of the words, and so if you're identifying as something that is identified as distinguished from that which is real, then you're going to get artificial treatment. I mean, you're going to get an artificial, what's the word I'm looking for? you're gonna get treated as such.
Right.
Could I add something, fella?
All day. Yeah, indeed.
I'm just gonna say this. Once you understand this education, the reason why they told you were black, Negro, colored, slave, to keep you from the international application, so that you cannot meet those elements, that you didn't know that you had a fundamental right to go what? Go back and get your lost sovereignty. There is no international application for black people. There's no international application for slavery. So they use these words to manipulate your reality, to pull you away from this international application, because they know your freedom is rested in your own education. This is why they taught us this. This is why people are having a hard time, because this was forced on us. Y'all remember Roots? Kunta Kinte. Now your name is Toby.
Stripped him from his identity, his ancestry, his genealogy, consanguinity.
So we got to remember that too. I don't want to be hard on everybody either. Why? Because I was one point running around telling I'm black. Because this is what I was told. My children, I tell them they Moors every day. They still, daddy, and I don't know what you talking about. They battle with that. Why? Because everybody at their school, the teachers say they black. And they teaching them about black history. And then they showing them black heroes. Look at Malcolm X. Look at Martin Luther King. Look at these black heroes. So we got to remember that. So it's up to us to lay down this foundation and show that we're going to get remedy. Now we can get remedy. And I yield.
All right, so we talking about international human rights. Well, anybody got anything else they want to add on before we go in? Anybody got any questions? Anything they want to add on? Okay, so we talking about international human rights law. International human rights laws prohibit many practices that violate basic human rights, including human trafficking. This is a global issue that involves forcing people into labor and sexual exploitation, often through violence, abuse of power, and denial of freedom. It can also include slavery, child labor, debt bondage, or forced marriage. War crimes. These are serious violations of international humanitarian law that can include torture, direct attack on civilizations or civilians, use of prohibited weapons, and crimes of sexual violence. And I just want to say the part where it says direct attack on civilians, I mean, we see that every day. Torture, we see that every day. And so this is a war crime that's being played against us. We see the human trafficking every time we go into a Walmart or a store and they got the missing children on the wall. An international claim is a legal demand made by one government to another through diplomatic channels or an international tribunal. The claim seeks redress for an acts or omissions that the responding government is responsible for under international laws or a treaty. There go that word, treaty. International claims generally have three elements: ownership, a wrongful act by the foreign sovereign, and damage. Brother Elkanah, you wanna go in or you wanna touch on this?
I'm going to ask for King to give us a little, because his knowledge of of international law, when we talk about this, talking about an international claim, I would like to have his input on this one. King, would you?
Okay, so when we're laying down the foundation for a claim and we're talking about an injury or we're looking for redress, it identified that there are 3 elements. These elements make up an international principle. This is a universal principle that goes around to every nation. This is not something that one nation decide. This is an international tort action. We're making a redress based on acts or omissions. This was an omission. These are acts and omissions by the United States. What did they do? They never made us whole again. That was an omission. By denationalizing, that was omission. Then what else did they do? Here, what other acts did they do? Other things that they progressively, right? They committed these acts over and over and over. And they never one time tried to make us whole again. See, they claim what? The doctrine of discovery. They claim the land they said by conquest. But if it's done by conquest, ain't there a contradiction in between discovery and conquest?
Mm-hmm.
How can it be abandoned and there was a war at the same time? So through these, we must learn these international principles so that we can seek redress, so that we can break down these applications. You got to understand this is an international application. This is universal. This is an ancient principle. This is built on equity. So anytime you see elements, words should come to your mind as principle. There's an international principle involved here. And we need to learn how to lay down these claims for damages.
Mm-hmm.
Our children, us, depends on this. We can't change the past, but we damn sure can change the future. So I'm looking at this, and we must understand how to understand. They're talking about an international application of law based on elements and meeting those elements to perfect a claim for an action of redress. To be able to claim damages. Without understanding these principles, we're not going nowhere. I tell people, I'm doing it today. If you do not know principles of law, you won't even know how to perfect a claim. You cannot know law without knowing these principles. You cannot know it because the principles is rooted in everything, in every form of government. You cannot not know these. This is why we teach in the class. I need y'all to take heed to what we are doing here. We have a chance to change and lay down the foundation. So I want y'all to look at this and look at the claim. It says an international claim is a legal demand made by one government to another through diplomatic channels. So what is they telling you? This is a what? Private right of action. There's one government. This is not a multilateral treaty. They said one government to another. That means it's a private international law action. That means it must be done by a government. Can't no other government do it for you. Another through diplomatic channels or international tribunals. The claim seeks redress for acts or omissions that the respondent government is responsible for under international law or treaty. What they're talking about, that means that is a bilateral treaty. It's not a multilateral treaty. So if you're not saying you are more, You don't have no, black people don't have no treaty rights or no treaty benefits. I want you to look at how I'm systematically breaking this down. International claims generally have 3 elements. International claims generally have 3 elements: ownership, a wrongful act by the foreign sovereign, and damages. So what is this? These are the elements for what? A tort. They just gave you the breakdown for a tort action. You must meet these 3 elements to perfect a tort claim. By what? From one government to another, making a bilateral treaty so that you can sue for whatever damages to get your reparations to be made whole again. That is the principle of equity. The equity lies within the treaties. You see how I'm able to read this and systematically break it down and show you the principle. The principle in here is equity. Under a tort action. Just by reading this, I'm able to put the formula together based on what? The science of law, the operation of law. If you don't know this, you ain't gonna be able to do this. I yield, gentlemen.
Indeed. All right, let's move on. So here are more international human rights laws that are prohibited and or that prohibits many practices that violate basic human rights, and they include arbitrary deprivation of life. This can include political executions, assassinations, or arbitrary arrest or detention. We talked a little bit about the arbitrary arrests. Next is discrimination. This can include religious discrimination, racial discrimination, or advocacy of racial or religious hatred. And then you have discrimination. That was discrimination 1. And then you have discrimination 2, harassment based on race, sex, national origin, disability, or religion. This can include being denied admission or segregated in educational program or activity, or being denied educational accommodations for a disability or language barrier. And these are all federal law violations. Okay. International human rights laws prohibits many practices that violate basic human rights, including police brutality or use of excessive force, including patterns of police misconduct. This can also include being searched and arrested under false pretense, including racial or other discriminatory profiling, pulling you over for whatever, you know what I'm saying, or just stopping you on the street or whatever.
They always say a tail light, then they say, "Oh, we smell like marijuana in the car."
Indeed. Indeed, yeah. I mean, it's a lot of things. I remember one, and just saying that, and I don't want to eat up too much of our time on this, but I remember one time some years ago, I think I might have been in my 20s or so, and it could have been in my 30s. Here I am, I got on a reservationist uniform, the white shirt with the little the badge or ribbon things up top. I had my ID on, blue pants, black shoes on, the whole 9 yards, you know, looking like I'm someone in the Air Force, or maybe looking like almost like a captain of a, you know, of a commercial airliner or something like that. I'm driving my car. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. Police came behind me I'm probably doing about a good 35, 40 miles an hour or whatever the case it is. And they pulled me over, and they actually busted my back light, tail light, and said that my tail light was out. So this is part of the profiling, and this was a Moor, you know what I'm saying, in police uniform, so these are things that happen now, and these are things that have happened in the past. But again, it's a violation of basic human rights, economic, social, and cultural rights. These rights include the right to work. And there's scores of examples of that. There's situations where, okay, you can't work because you're overqualified or you're underqualified, or there's just a lot of different things that fall into this particular category. The right to education, being denied to go to school. We're going to see something about that as well, whether it be an elementary school, whether it be a high school or grammar school, or a university. And the right to physical and mental health accommodations. Violations can include being prevented from getting a job or education because of race, religion, or gender. So, I mean, nothing has to be really explained about that. It's just the fact of the matter is, many of us have scores of examples, and we've seen certain propaganda or TV shows or programs or things of that nature that have shown these very same things. All right, let's move on. International human rights, again, law prohibits many practices that violate basic human rights, including freedom of assembly. This right protects the ability to organize and take part in peaceful meetings, marches, and demonstrations. It also protects the right to be part of associations such as clubs, societies, political parties, religious organizations, and trade unions. And all of these have been violated, you know what I'm saying? And then human trafficking. Millions of men, women, and children are forced into labor and sexual exploitation. And I'm just gonna add on the daily, this is happening now, today. So again, international human rights law is something that we really need to examine, and that's why we've been talking about it throughout this presentation, because we've been.
Hold on, Brother Kirk, can you mute your mic?
Can you mute your mic? International law, and unfortunately, I mean, we're going through it, and that's why we're having so many slides on this and conversations, because we really got to get into the international human rights and see, what this is really all about, and understand, but again, we have to do this as a nationality, as a nation, as a government, because if we're not doing it as a government, if we're not doing it in the proper context, then it's all for naught. We fought these fights in previous years, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago, but not as Moors, not as a government, not as a people who, a part of who know their nationality. So these fights have been fought, but it was just fought in the wrong context or without giving the proper context. So that's why it went nowhere. All right. Any comments? Anybody have a comment?
I got one.
All right.
I always got something to say.
Yep.
Also, me being a nurse, understanding this, we have to be careful. Some of us are being misdiagnosed.
Mhm.
They're over medicating our children, saying that our children are special needs and have behavior problems. Why? And then they're coming into, then that's a way to open up the door to enter into our homes. Now they got access to come into your home to examine what you're doing with your children. So I want us to understand the purpose of having political legitimacy is to create institutions that safeguard us, that put us in a condition of safeguard, meaning there's protocols, that mean that we have things in place to help, not hurt. We got to understand the purpose of this government is not mere just to put things in place, but it's also through the knowledge and understanding that we don't set conditions where we allow people to take advantage and exploit us. Because this is what they're doing now. Black people, about that time they get age 65, Moors, melanated people, they are targeted. We carry the pharmaceutical industry. I need y'all to understand what I'm saying to you. We carry, they got us and children, between the young children and to the older adults. Most older adults are at least on 10 pills. They on prescription medication. I need you to understand that. Children and older adults, as you get older, we're on 10 pills. So they're exploiting us in every way. They target us in every way, in every industry we are targeted. The purpose of us educating ourselves is to put these safeguards up. Come and change our condition. I just wanted to say that so that we understand the importance of nationality and building institutions, the institution of government that will safeguard us in not just one aspect, in every aspect of our being. I yield.
Islam. And let me just add a little, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say when I was listening to you read the Freedom of Assembly, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was Clinton that signed the act where if there were multiple so-called blacks in the crowd, that they could legally stop them and question them or something like that. Because I remember some years back when me and some brothers were sitting on the green box in some apartments a long time ago, and the jump out, so the police would just pull up and just jump out on us because it'd be a group of us. So it's just saying Freedom of Assembly, and I'm looking at where it said ability to organize and take part in peaceful meetings. You know what I mean? Me and these brothers just be sitting there having peaceful conversation, and the police just hop out and harass us. And this is something that a lot of people don't know is their rights, and that this is a violation of their rights when these things happen.
And I'm gonna add something here too, with Brother King was talking about, not just looking at the actual kids and being able to go into families, but even more so, I'm gonna tell you this here, is also being able, if some of you may be old enough to remember this movie Claudine, and in that, you know, it talks about a woman in the projects who has all of these kids by different fathers, and the fact of the matter that they can go in and just take those kids out. So when the government is able, or the state is able to go in and look and see what's going on in your household, then they also have the privilege of just taking your child. Then your child gets caught up in the system, and that's a whole nother thing. But again, they make money off of that. And the school system, going ahead and dealing with the education and being able to take certain things out of certain schools as far as education is concerned, like phonics and writing and and things of that nature, so that now you don't even have the fair opportunity to compete against your peers. And then also looking at the special education of the child when you go ahead and get diagnosed with these different just being diagnosed with these particular things, what and things is not the word I'm looking for, but you know, I'm just at a loss of word right now. But the fact of the matter is, see, that's money for the school. The child gets a regular child coming to your school, you get a budget of a certain amount of attendance that will get you maybe $10,000 per each child. Well, if you're a special ed and you have and you've been tagged with ADHD or ADD or whatever the case may be, you know, ME or whatever the case it is, then what ends up happening is that child is worth about $30,000. And don't let that child be physically or mentally handicapped, then you're looking at about $45,000. So it's money that's being made as well. So a lot of times what they do when they see a young male, a young Moorish American male, they will go ahead and say, okay, he's ADHD, or he has behavioral disability, or he has an emotional disability. All right, so now that $10,000 is just tripled. Now the school gets $30,000 for that particular child. So it's a lot of things, but you know, as King is saying, hey, you know what? If you don't know the law and if you don't know the rights, then that's what destroys everything. That's what destroys us, because now they're making money. That's also part of exploitation as well, because it's like, okay, well, you don't know what this is here. All I got to do is label this, and that's what it is. I just came from the hospital today, but I went and did a chem panel, CBC cross panel. Just all of this was just medical terms. King knows what that is, being a nurse, and some of you others may know, you know, what some of those things where I didn't know. So, you know, but the thing behind it is, after they got through collecting all this blood, they were like, oh, well, you need something for your kidneys, you need something for your heart, you need something for your pre-diabetes and this and that. They had about, and I've been taking herbs my whole life. And now they like, okay, you need about 15 different medications. And I'm like, whoa, you know what I'm saying? Again, that's another way, because you don't know, because the fact that you don't know, not just law, but because you don't know, then you're subject, you know, you're subject to whatever it is that's being, that's happening. So just being aware of that. And I yield. And
All right, so go ahead.
Other human rights issues include, again, we see this word arbitrary detention, crimes, and because that's just a major one, crimes against humanity, forced disappearance. You just gone. They pick you up off the street and then you disappear. You gone. You know, you don't have any parents or no family, anything like that. You just gone. You know what I'm saying? Sexual and gender-based violence, genocide, summary execution, torture, and war crimes. And again, you know, these are just a few of the other human rights issues that are included in this international human rights. All right.
All right, so we talk about the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 15. Everyone has a right to a nationality. And so, as you see here, I mean, this was just adopted December 10th, 1948. This is all 30 articles, but we wanted to make sure that we see Article 15, everyone has a right to a nationality. Would you like to explain your picture?
All right, so here, what we're just looking at is everyone has a right to nationality is what we see for Article 15. And what we're taking a look at is we have a Moorish man and a Moorish a woman. And this is, it's not a well, it's a national garb, but this is a garb that, you know, wearing we would look at everyone has a right to nationality, you know, to identify yourself, to have your culture, to have your language, to have your identity intact, to know who you are. So this is an example. I mean, there's many different looks for the women, there's many different looks for the men as far as your apparel is concerned. So that's just basically what and I was trying to look for something a little more ancient, you know what I'm saying? I wanted to go back, but this is cool because this is looking at today. Maybe the brother might be a little, you know, that might be going back a little bit, but I mean, it's still today. This is still today. But again, this is our culture, and this is what our attire looks like. Some of the attire looks like.
So we talk about Ruby Neal Bridges Hall, which was the first melanated young girl to go to an integrated school. Bridges' story is a defining moment in the civil rights movement, and is the subject of a 1964 painting by Norman Rockwell titled "The Problem We All Live With." And on the right, we see the George Floyd "I Can't Breathe" in Minneapolis.
And again, this is part of the discrimination on the left, and on the right, we're looking at the brutality. You know, we as Moors have been dehumanized. We see that on the right side. We've been denied or forcibly denied. This picture, as many of us already know, on the left side, when we're looking at the young girl here, we're looking at the fact that she's being escorted by federal officers, because if not, there's an angry mob that's going to by any means necessary make sure that she doesn't show up to school. So this is still proving the point, the claim of we as Moors have been brutalized, dehumanized, raped, tortured, and the whole 9 yards. And this is still part of that claim. And this is the proof right here. All right.
Oh.
Nope.
So yeah, the lynching and torture of blacks in the Jim Crow era or in the Jim Crow South weren't just acts of racism; they were religious rituals.
Again, you know, being brutalized, dehumanized, and the whole 9 yards. We see a brother that's being hung. Well, I'm sorry. Before we even get to that part, we see a brother that's being strangled right here. And this was one of those was Hayes Turner. His widow, Mary Turner, was distraught. She spoke up about the murder and the whole 9 yards, but you know, nobody was paying attention to this. And I believe this was probably back in the 60s, 50s and 60s. But again, this is the type of torture, this is the type of treatment that we have undergone. And if we were claiming ourselves as Moors and we had the government, we had a lot of organizations going on back in the 50s and the 60s, but we just didn't have the right, we had the right intentions and the right heart, but we didn't have the right context of who we, you know, who we are. And that's kind of what puts us where we are now, 50, 60 years later. And in the middle, we see the Ku Klux Klan that is a brother being, and I can't remember, Kono, is this the same brother?
Yeah, that's the brother Hayes Turner.
This is the brother Hayes Turner in the middle. Not only was he grabbed And I don't know what the reason was, but in those days, it didn't make a difference what it was. Just like in these days, it doesn't make a difference what it is. You know what I'm saying? And then they did this to him. Of course, they tortured him. And even more so, after just being tortured, now you're being burned alive. I mean, you know, this is it. And then over here, this is another brother that's just being beaten down by, you know, a mob. And you can see somebody has a stick in their hand, you know, while the other ones are just beating them, you know. In Chicago here, we couldn't go past there was a certain amount of blocks that you could go. And then after that, you couldn't go north, south, east, or west. And if you were caught, you would, and be strange fruit hanging from the trees. All right.
This was
This
in
is
Waco, Texas. Mary Pearson doesn't need to be reminded of the Jesse Washington lynching. And I believe one of these were the ones we were talking about, the Mary, when they lynched her and they cut her baby out of her stomach and then stomped on her baby.
If I'm not mistaken, and I could be, but I'm not mistaken, I think this might have been on the left.
That's what I'm
That
thinking,
might have
yeah.
been. And if it's not, then you know it's just another example of the torture and the murder that was just going on, you know. And again, part of that was part of the mindset, you know, of white supremacy, but then more so of well, in addition to going through with the color of the skin and the whole 9 yards. And that goes into a deeper thing with the blue vein societies and things of that nature. If you were passing, then for as a Moor, then fortunately, you know, you had the hair and kind of a skin tone. You can bypass a lot of this, you know, you would just escape it, and not associate with folks of darker hue. But at the same time, this is still part of the torture and the things that we suffer, and murder that we suffered, as Moors.
All right, so significant anti-black laws, including the 1829 Georgia included 1829 Georgia prohibited teaching blacks to read, which was punishable by fines and imprisonment. In 1830, Louisiana and North Carolina passed laws punishing anyone teaching blacks to read with fines, imprisonment, or flogging. Before the 1830s, there were a few restrictions on teaching slaves to read and write. After the slave revolt led by Nat Turner in 1831, all slave states except Maryland, Kentucky, and Tennessee passed laws against teaching slaves to read or write. A white person convicted of violating the law will be subjugated to $100 or $200 fine or imprisonment. A free black person would face a fine, imprisonment, or between 20 and 39 lashes. And an enslaved black person convicted of teaching other enslaved people to read or write will receive 39 lashes or death.
So the penalty for just educating and not having the people to be subjugated the way we are today, was death or torture, you know. And that's why it's imperative now that we know who we are, and we know the laws and the rights, and we have to come together as a nation and as a government, to reclaim, you know, not just who we are, but reclaim our rights, our resources, our land, everything. So, and the main reason for making sure that we didn't read and write and things of that nature, so we couldn't communicate, but then so that we also wouldn't know the law and we wouldn't know certain things that was going on. So this was and to this day, the punishments may be a little different, but it's still, to some degree, it's still going on, in variant, you know, in varying degrees today.
You got something you want to add, Brother King?
I want y'all to think about this. There's no difference. The only difference is they gave you the illusion of freedom. They still miseducate you. They still created the school to prison pipeline. Why is they doing that? I had what's the girl who wrote the new Jim Crow? I had her book. All they did was come out with the new Jim Crow. It's no difference. The more I look deeper into what's going on, ain't too much to change. They just masqueraded and gave it another look. That's all they did. They just gave it another look. This is why it's time for us, those who know, to change the condition. I yield.
Indeed, indeed, Islam.
All right, so
All
want
right.
me to read it? Go ahead.
No, I get it. I got to get this. Whatchamacallit, this. I'm trying to bring some of this stuff out of my face here. All right, human rights violations occur when someone's human rights are not protected or are intentionally prohibited. Governments and authorities are often responsible for these violations. Some examples of human rights violations include the denial of rights, arresting someone for peaceful speech, denying someone a job or education based on their race, religion, or gender, or denying rights while arrested or incarcerated. This happens all the time. Discrimination, harassment based on sex, race, sex, national origin, disability, or religion, or discriminating at work based on traits like race, gender, and sexual orientation. Arbitrary detention, arresting and detaining someone without due process or legal biases. And you saw we've been looking at arbitrary detention. This is probably about the 6th or 7th time we've seen that, because this is something that happens a lot. Discrimination, we've seen that a couple of times, and denial of rights. And then finally, cruelty, subjugating someone to torture, cruel, humane, or degrading treatment or punishment. All of these is what we've actually seen in our claim to say we as Moors have been dehumanized, tortured, raped, killed, abused. I mean, and the list goes on. But these 4 are main ones that happen to repeat themselves on a constant basis. Any comment? Okay, so let's go on, because again, we're bringing this back to bringing it back home. Human rights violators and war criminals have engaged in acts of genocide, torture, rape, extrajudicial killings, recruitment of child soldiers, violations of religious freedom, and other forms of persecution. These actions occur overseas, typically during war or conflict. And a lot of these happen here too, but some of these are also happening overseas as well, to Moors. Okay.
I got you on this one.
Right.
Human rights violations. The relative scarcity of legal cases concerning enslaved descendants suggests that most slaveholders meted out discipline without involving the courts. Slaveholders resorted to an array of physical and psychological punishment in response to misconduct, including the use of whips, wooden rods, boots, fists, and dogs. The threats of selling an enslaved person away from loved ones and family members was perhaps the most powerful weapon available to slaveholders. In general, punishment was designed to maximize the slaveholder's ability to gain profit from slave labor. Evidence also suggests that slaveholders were willing to employ violence and threats in order to coerce enslaved people into sexual relations. We see this today. We see all of this today. The whip, the beatings, the dog attacks, the snatching the children up, separating them from the families. I mean, we see all this today.
Yep, and it's true.
You want to touch on it, or when we go to the next one?
I mean, yeah, I can touch on it a little bit. Again, as King was saying before, like, it's the same. I just say it's been modernized a little bit. You know what I'm saying? You don't see nobody getting burned or anything like that. But, when you look at, some of the things that we just in the reading, we're looking at violence and threats in order to coerce enslaved people into sexual relationships, or look at resorted to an array of physical and psychological punishments in response to misconduct and stuff like that. This happens in the jails, you know what I'm saying? Now, maybe not the use of whips, but the wooden rods, that's the batons, you know what I'm saying? Or the billy sticks, as they call them, I guess, a nickname for baton now. Billy sticks, that's the wooden rods, boots just being kicked, with Rodney King. They were beating them with the wooden rods, they were stomping them, and they were hitting them with the fists. And their dogs are still being used today, like today, 2024, to be sicked on, I'm using that as a slang word, but to be attacked, individuals. So these are things that are happening right now. Loved ones being removed from their families. Again, this is something that when we take a look at, I mentioned the movie Claudine, when you're on Section 8 or Public Aid or something like that. I mean, if you go ahead and you get someone who it has a man in the family and said, okay, now either you're gonna rely on the man, the government, right, or you're gonna rely on your man. If you rely on your man, we taking our stuff back. You know what I'm saying? We kicking you out. We taking the food stamps or the SNAP or whatever the case it is. Now you're gonna have to make the money yourself. So it hasn't, none of this stuff has changed. But again, if we do not claim our nationality, if we do not understand the law, if we do not establish government, then these things are going to keep on happening. Now the next generation got to deal with it. So we're at a very strong point right now. And the thing is, we have to continue with the classes and learning the law and things of that nature. And we got to start, establish, and we're doing this now. We're establishing, we're establishing ourselves and getting ourselves together. So it's just a matter of time before we change the conditions. All right, let's move on.
All right, so we talk about the laws created during the civil rights. They were misrepresented as rights of people being civil. Oh, let me reread this. Laws created during the civil rights, these were represented as rights of people being civil to another people, but the correct type of rights are human rights. And so as Elkanan been saying, I mean, we've been fighting this fight for the last 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years, but we've been fighting it under the wrong mental. We've been going about this fight the wrong way. We've been arguing civil rights when we should have been arguing human rights.
Civil rights have been hold on, I'm saying, and we should have been identifying our nationality so that we have a we have a government so we can be underneath protection of the treaties. So go ahead.
I'm just gonna say, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, signed into law by President Lyndon Johnson on July 2nd, 1964, was the most significant civil rights legislation since the Reconstruction. It banned discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin in public places, schools, federally assisted programs, and hiring, promoting, and firing. The act also established an Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, which we've talked about that. I mean, it still had nothing to do with it because you see the words race and color in there, which we know those are artificial, but this is what it civil rights did under the coloring term, I guess. Is that am I help me clear this up, brother El Kanai.
Yeah. So all right. So this act, what it actually did, by banning discrimination based on the color, race, of course, those are erroneous names, but you know, or I won't say erroneous, but it's misconceptions, you know, looking at race and color, but based off of race, color, religion, sex, and national origin in public places, such as the schools, federally assisted programs, you know, what you call it, SNAP and all this other stuff, education, grants, loans, or whatever, hiring, promoting, and firing, you know, all of this was established during this time under the EEOC, which is the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. So this is just what basically, this is what this actually talks about underneath the civil rights. And this is what was what was brought up in 1964. The EEOC was created. All right, laws created during civil rights again. All right, this is just a heading, so we're on this for a minute. When President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st, 1863, in the midst of the Civil War, he was not ending slavery. As King said, you know, we still not out of slavery or declaring it illegal. Okay, so again, that's why we still here. We still in it. You know what I'm saying? It's not just us, it's more. So I'm not gonna just, you know, oh, woe is me. But the fact of the matter is, it's still happening. It's still, you know, it's still happening. It's in a modern day slavery though. You know, you're not walking around in chains. Well, I have to take that back. You're not walking around in chains as a so-called free person. You have the slaves on the job place. You have the slaves. You have slaves as far as having an apartment, because you don't own it. You're still just paying something. You know, slaves as far as in jails and prisons, because that's free labor. You don't get paid no money. You know, and for the individuals who are working the jobs, you are, you know, you're subjugated to work, you know, even when you go home, you're taking the work home or whatever, but the amount of time that you put in versus the amount of money that you get is still slavery. It might be 5% more, you know, than I want in dealing with slavery. You know, during the time of slavery, I mean, you wouldn't get paid anything, just like in the jails and the prison systems or whatever. But the fact of the matter is, you know, it's not been declared illegal, and it was not. It wasn't ended. So the executive order was a wartime.
Now, let me clarify something. All right, let me address something.
Yep.
So we can understand. All right. The ending of slavery would mean making us whole, returning us. So let's look. All right, what is an element? What is an element to ending slavery, to ending subjugation? What is it? Key element is making a people whole, returning them to their original condition. That is a baseline. We must use that as a baseline. All right, just follow me, my brothers and sisters. Please follow me. I take over Elkanah's house, hold them in captivity for 5 years. 5 years later, I say, Elkanah, you're free. I still remain in the house. I release the chains, but I'm still in the house.
You're a slave mentally.
He's able to now go where he freely move around the house. All right. And so, man, Elkanah is free. Elkanah is free because he was in chains and he's no longer in chains, and he's able to still run the house, but I have not returned him to his original condition.
I didn't give him.
I'm still in the house. We got to understand a key element is returning a people, meaning that this whole we weren't getting paid and now we're getting paid. That is not an element. That's not an element. The element is returning a people to their original condition. Anything short of that, is not the ending of slavery. We cannot accept anything short of being returned to our original condition. I mean that if they paid us 100,000 working, but they still are on our land, still control our resources, excuse me, would that be the ending of slavery? It has, once again, until we understand the major element, returning a people to their original condition, making them whole, indemnify them, making them whole. If that's not done, there ain't no ending of nothing. There ain't no freedom. It's not freeing the people. Freedom equals being returned to your original condition. Let's put that on board. Freedom equals making a people whole, returning them to their original condition. That's the element. That's baseline. If that's not done, if you don't see that, then you're not free. Are people using that as an element? Are they using that returning? No. They're using what? What are they using? Well, we used to be in chains. We weren't getting paid. Now we're getting paid.
Have no change.
They used to, but they're not using, that's returning us to our original condition. And our people are not using that. They're not looking at that as an element, returning us to our original condition. Well, they don't know the original condition, so they don't know who they are. All right, so that's major for us, brothers and sisters. All right, I yield.
All right, indeed, Islam. And that, so you mentioned, okay, so you said was not ending slavery. So slavery was not ended. And that's true. He was not ending slavery. He even said that, right? But then the part two, or the second statement, was he was not ending slavery, right? We're talking about Abe Lincoln, or declaring it illegal. Now that's the other part about it. So the fact of the matter is, it's not even illegal torturing, raping, beating, in the whole 9 yards. That's legal. Like that's no big deal. And up to a certain point, that's 1863. But in 1963, you know, if you went ahead and you found the Moor and you beat them or shot them or whatever, It wasn't illegal. It wasn't illegal. And this was just to the 60s, right? So that's another issue right there. That's another issue that, to actually take a look at. So and that's even today, if you have Moors that you just say, hey, we see some people assembling on the street or whatever the case it is, we just gonna pick you up. Now, there are some laws that will that will prevent that, or at least that's out there. But again, in the court systems, it's still, it's like, that's not really illegal. That's not an illegal. This person's rights have not been violated, and it just depends on the situation. So legally, yes, if someone, you just can't just go up and just shoot, a Moor in the head. You can't just do that. But the fact of the matter is, who's got the mic? Somebody's got to turn their.
I keep muting them, but they keep on muting themselves. All right, go ahead.
All right. So the fact of the matter is, also declaring it illegal, or not declaring it illegal. And like I said, there are laws that are out here, of course, that prohibit that, but at the same time, it still takes place. So again, that was a very crucial statement that we're reading right now, the Emancipation Proclamation. Again, Abe Lincoln was not ending slavery nor declaring it illegal. And we're just talking about just as far as slavery is concerned, but good information. Good point, actually, Abdullah. So the executive order was a wartime measure that promised slaves in the Confederation their freedom should they make it to the Union lines. So even then, there was no promise. You know what I'm saying? It was just, hey, if you make it, if you make it back home, you good. If not, oh well. You know what I'm saying? And there's a lot of information to be pumped in this one, because there's still information that we need to actually talk about with this, but we want to move on. And we're going to come back to some of these things, again, dealing with international law and domestic law, things that we need to actually examine. So it even purposefully overlooked slaves in those border states that had not joined the Confederacy. Instead, the 13th Amendment of December 6, 1865, abolished slavery, which again, we know that it didn't abolish slavery, because the example that Abdullah made, still more Americans were vulnerable to subjugation. Still today. The South was passing so-called black codes that effectively tried to re-enslave free persons, which, we weren't free anyways, creating a form of neo-slavery by criminalizing black behavior. And I'm just reading the quote. Says Behar Amzi, legal director of the Center of Constitutional Rights. So there were statutes that prohibited vulgarities or spitting, or if you did not have employment, you could be imprisoned and then leased as labor to whites in a form of debt bondage. Okay.
About earlier, vagrancy laws for gathering. So they created laws when we came together, assembled, or we stood in front of a building soliciting. These are laws to promote or to what I call these are counter, these are laws to counter other laws or other freedoms. Or they're being vagrant, they're soliciting, right? To move you away, to now say you're not protesting, right? So these are laws, but what we need to understand is how Abdullah got to the principles. One of the things when we understand when we dealing with this, if you don't know the principle of what he was saying, while we made whole again, if you're not being made whole, being able to assembly, practice your religion, language, customs, form your own body politic, internationally and domestically, you're not free.
Mm-hmm.
You're not free in no kind of way. And civil rights I think, is arbitrary. Because now you have to wait on them to determine, get an answer for your violations. Civil rights, how many of us has really got civil rights? How many times have they violated us and we try to sue and we ain't get nothing?
Mm.
It's arbitrary. And then I want y'all to think about this. The Supreme Court only hears so many cases. They don't hear all the time. They only hear so many cases annually. And then they shut the door on all the other cases. So I need y'all to understand that. So they gave us civil rights versus human rights. How can civil rights ever outdo equity in making you whole again? I want y'all to see that. They gave us civil rights so they can control the rights. But instead of making you whole, they gave you civil rights. That was a ploy. Now, we ain't gonna make them whole, we just gonna give them some civil rights. I yield.
Just to add a quick comment to that, even at saying civil rights, we look at civil rights, and of course we defined that earlier with civil rights versus human rights, but civil rights guarantees equal social opportunities and protection under the law, regardless of your race, religion, or other characteristics. And that's a lie. We didn't even get civil rights. So even though they went ahead and gave the civil rights and then said, we're going to take them back through discrimination and violating all of these other human rights, they didn't even give the full civil rights in the first place because we weren't protected under law. And it wasn't, the thing based off of race, religion, and other characteristics, but just looking at race, religion, even then that's false. So, yeah, these are some real tough, and some strong things that are actually, that we're actually covering. And it's not something to be glossed over or whatever the case it is. But we kind of moved a little quick, but we did have some explanations in some of these, and we're going to come back, of course, to finish this, but at the same time, we're going to talk more about these particular laws in more detail, because this is the heart of it. This is the heart of it. And if we gloss over this, then we're going to miss a lot and do a disservice to ourselves and to the people in general. If there's no more comments on this, we're going to move on. We have about 4 or 5 more minutes, and we're going to move to the next slide. We probably may have time for this next slide right here, because I'm pretty sure this is going to have some thought-provoking Yeah, it is. I don't even know. I don't even know if I want to even read this one. This
I was gonna say
is
we
not
can
gonna
either
be good.
we can start this on the next one or we can finish it with this one.
Nope, we're not gonna. No, and it's not a matter of time. And Abdullah, don't shoot me. I know how good your aim gonna be because I'm way over here in Chicago, so I don't know. You know, I'm a duck. But the thing behind it is, yeah, we're not gonna be. I don't even want to go into it because it's too much, and I don't want to just run through this one real quick because there's a lot of stuff in here. You know, Black people weren't U.S. citizens and had no legal rights. Opposition to the act soon followed. It's a lot. Dred Scott, and we gonna need to. This is gonna be about a good 20 minutes at least. So I'm gonna stop it right here because I don't want to run through this. We're dealing with some real hardcore stuff that we need to really examine and not just run through it. So I'm gonna say
We ain't even got to the meat yet.
well, I mean, because you know what though, this is important, people, you know, and what we were trying to do is just make sure that, hey man, listen, let's get through it. Now, I mean, we weren't trying to rush through it or nothing like that. We were like, well, let's just try and get through to a certain point each time. But this right here is hard. Like this is not thought-provoking only, but this is crucial, man. Like this sheds some tears. This brings up some angers. This does some things, and we can't just race through it and just be like, all right, look, we got through that. Whew. No, we attack this wrong as a people. Our elders, our forefathers, foremothers, all had the wrong mindset. The reason why we're talking about civil rights is because if we were looking at it from human rights, if we were looking at this from Moors, if we were looking at this as far as government is concerned, we'd be far further than where we are right now. We would have gained a lot, you know, if we were doing this 50, 60 years ago and we had the right we were looking at it from the right perspective or mindset. But because we weren't, the crucial thing is because we're looking at this from the right lens, from the right mindset, now we can actually look at this. Then we have to go back and recomb through this and now look at it. The history is already gone, but we need to be able to go through and say, hey, you know what? This is what we need to be looking at from this perspective. And now we need to attack this. And I'm sure when King and the rest of us on the investigative committee, when we look at these civil rights and go into it from a different lens, now we can go ahead and say, wait a minute, we need to attack here and here. We need to get these treaties and go here and here and here and break it down. So we don't want to run through this. And again, we're just skimming the surface on what we're dealing with right now anyways, because we're not putting the treaties to it. We're not adding some of the things. We just want to bring these things to the forefront of everyone's minds and just start thinking about this. Now that it's out here, we're going to be able to delve into it when we have some of our other gatherings or whatever, and then we can come back and then really address some of these things again from a different lens and from a deeper perspective. I yield. Go ahead, Akono, if you want to close us out, or Abdullah, if you want to make some comments before we close out. You know,
Or Brother King, if y'all got anything y'all want to close with, you can go ahead before.
I want to say this to everyone. It's very important that we take this and start noting, writing, documenting, taking notes. Why? Because we're going to get maybe in situations and you're going to have to know this on them at the blink of an eye. You ain't going to have time to rehearse it. It's not going to be rehearsable. You got to understand that at some point we're going to get into turbulence based on what we're doing. You got to know this. It got to be a part of your DNA. It has to be a part of your DNA. You have to do this without thinking. I don't even have to think about it anymore. I can wake up and it's all over. Why? Because I wanted to know. I sacrificed everything. I didn't chase the bag. I chased this. I said, I need to have the knowledge of this because I needed to see how these people are doing this. And the more I dug, the more I uncovered. So I need y'all to be taking notes. I need y'all to be watching these videos. I need you not to take this in vain. Because one day you're going to need to be able to be called to action, but not just for us, but for yourself. This information can change your situation. See, I can put the paperwork together for you, but I can't, if you're in, in another state, I can't come to that state. But that don't, so I need y'all to understand this got to be absorbed. This got to be running through your veins. You got to know this. I sleep on this. I go to bed with this. I take this wherever I go. Why? Why do I think like that? Because these people changed my whole entire life. And I wanted to know how someone can have that kind of power to come and undo what's already been done. How did they have that kind of power? So I just want us to take this not for vain, not as a grain of salt. I want us to ingest this, all this stuff brothers is teaching, learning. I appreciate all the brothers, Quasi, Okono, Elkanah, Abdullah, Shem, and all the people who are attending tonight. Amanda, DuPont, Brian. I'm thankful.
Pacola, I say Chef Terrence, Vicerious. Got Vicerious. Who else has been doing teaching?
Kurt, Jermaine, William. I appreciate everyone for attending. But this is a call to action.
Or Saeed also teaches in his and he's in California. DuPont.
So in a minute, I'm working on a petition. And I want to get at least 10,000 signatures so that we can start forming a permanent population, that it could be a record of it. It could be a record of it and sent to Congress. That now it's going to be official record that we can get a petition saying, hey, boom, 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 this is who we are, 10,000. And then we can start trying to form body politics and start moving along. So that we can start going out eventually across the world and talking to people. So that's in the works, that's in the plans. I'm working with Abdullah. I talk to Abdullah every day. I never have been so excited. Now I'm super excited for Abdullah. I am super. And I'm going to back him and we're going to push this on through. And I yield at that. And I'm thankful, but I want us to absorb this. Don't take this, take advantage of this. Me and Abdullah teaching classes. These brothers is teaching class. Nobody is charging a dime. This is priceless information. Don't just stagger this information and just act like it's, no. Take this information. This is gems. This is priceless. Act like you're going to Harvard. This is Harvard. You're getting a Harvard education. I want y'all to understand this. And then now take this education out with you. And when we get done, we can say we graduated. We got a Harvard degree. I yield, family.
Islam, and thanks, Islam.
Well, that's it. I want to thank y'all. Thank you, Brother Elkanan. Thank you, King. Thank you, Brother Abdullah. Thank you, Sister Pacola. Thank you, everybody who's attending. I thank all y'all. We'll leave off right here, and we'll be back in 2 weeks. Sound about right, Brother Elkanan? 2 weeks from today?
2 weeks from today sounds fine to me.
Okay. Anybody have any more questions? Anything they want to add?
Yes, I just want to add one thing. Dealing with I know this might be off subject or anything, but dealing with Obama and Kamala Harris, the way I look at it is they don't have any bloodline ties to this land, but they're trying to represent us. They can't go back to the 1800s and find any of their ancestors here or anything like that. So they're trying to represent us falsely. And that's all I have to say, and I yield.
Wow.
Well, I appreciate everyone for attending, and we'll see y'all again in 2 weeks. And thank y'all again.
I appreciate you,
Thank
family.
you. Thank y'all. Peace and love.
Peace and love.
Peace and love.